give them a shot to do what?
I love you.
What is going on, everybody? This is Mike Hughes, aka The Shy Kid, and you're listening to The Shy Kid Podcast, brought to you by Give Us a Shot Network. Today, we're talking to someone far more impressive than me. We're talking to someone far more interesting. We're talking to a two-time Stanley Cup champion turned CEO, sitting with the man himself, a Chicago legend, and an advocate for everybody in sports right now. This is so much bigger than hockey, so much bigger than football. This is all around. Daniel Carcillo is joining the show. Car Bomb, how we feeling, baby?
Yeah, buddy. Sweaty, but good. Good. I couldn't get in my my bedroom because my 10-week-old baby's sleeping, but all good, man. Nice intro. Good to be with you.
Man, appreciate you for being here, man. I know we've been working this out for a little bit, and I'm just super excited to unpack everything you've been doing since your NHL career ended. Um, and the whole drama with the NHL. We're gonna get into that. We're gonna talk about everything going on. But I wanted to kind of just tell your story. I feel like throughout the years, it's always been Showtime, Patrick Kane. It's always been Captain Sirius, Jonathan Toews, and telling the stories of all the big names. But finding out who a player really is from the very beginning to the last guy at the end of the bench of a championship caliber team, it's so key and so pivotal to if you're going to be able to make it to the Stanley Cup or the Super Bowl or the World Series. So I want to start with you, man. You talk about King City, Canada. Take me through what life was like growing up there, getting into hockey. I'm from Chicago, man. We don't have a lot of hockey cats over here. That's a little north over to Minnesota. So what's it like growing up there and just the overall atmosphere?
Yeah, so it was a small farming town north of Toronto, about 7,500 people. It's a little bit bigger now, but very much everybody kept their car doors unlocked, houses. We never locked our house. Everybody knew each other's names, and the community really revolved around the rink. And there's over 900,000 minor hockey league players in Ontario. Over Canada, there's only 30 million people, so you get a sense of just how competitive the actual area that you live in is. And if you didn't play hockey, you were kind of you were shut out of school and conversations and those sorts of things. So with everything revolving around the hockey rink, I went to the rink daily, and I just found this sport that I could kind of leave everything else and just work towards a common goal, which is winning. Back then, when we were 4, we were hitting kids. So very early on, you get to understand that you can take somebody's will or desire to touch a puck by using physical force. And then eventually, if those people start to quit, then
Think we lost Dan for a quick second. That's okay though. Dan, I don't know if you could hear us, Dan. We lost you for a quick second. But we will get him right back in here as soon as we can. But I think that's a really dope. He started that conversation, he started getting into it, breaking it down for what it is and understanding, where we're at right now is like you could completely change the game. And I think that's really dope. I think that's a cool conversation. Um, but I think at the end of the day, for me, we grew up, and I know Dan could probably talk about it when he gets back in here. Um, but I think it's really cool that you get to this point to where you can just make those kind of decisions. You can make those things happen. And I think it's really cool that those kind of things can go down. But while we wait for Dan, man, I do want to give a real quick shout out to the Give Us a Shot Network. I think this is a good time for it because, Dan's not here, so we can just kind of break it down. Please give us a shot on the Give Us a Shot Network. Check us out on all streaming platforms. You can always check us out and see what we're doing, how we're doing it. There's so many amazing, great shows that you can check out from all around the sun. But it's going to be really interesting to see how the season continues. We got baseball in full effect. Protect Our Queens just finished off the championship game with South Carolina. Shout out Dawn Staley, Caitlin Clark, and everybody else involved. It's going to be a blast to see how this continues to develop and what the game of basketball is going to mean for women's sports with Juju Watkins and company. It's going to be really dope. So we're going to be waiting for a couple minutes just to get Dan back. We're going to see what happens. We're going to get him back in here. I think he actually is back. We'll see what happens. We did not get him back yet, but that is okay. That is completely okay. We'll get him back in a couple minutes. While you guys are waiting, make sure, give us a like, give us a subscribe, check out the Give Us a Shot Network. We'll be going live every single day, like I said. But man, listen, what else have we been doing? Man, the Cubs, we've been doing great stuff. If you go on the Instagram right now, Give Us a Shot, you could definitely check it out, see what we're doing, see what we're running with. It'll be a lot of fun to really break down what's going on. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to really see, how it continues to transpire, how things continue to go. But we got Dan back. He looks better than ever. So I'll stop giving us a shot. We got German here in the backstage doing God's work. So I appreciate him for tuning in.
Sorry, buddy.
No, you're okay. Completely okay. We just did a little advertising.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I just need to get a quick set of push-ups in.
Oh, it's understandable. He's making it. He didn't. We were gonna break the news later, I guess, Dan. But can you talk to us about how you're coming back for the Blackhawks? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean they
Connor needs some help, man.
Yeah, no doubt. But where'd you guys lose me? Just King City.
So we
growing up.
we lost you at. You were about to mention how you beat the shit out of 4-year-olds because you learned that you can get them to quit.
Yeah, no doubt, right? So will to play, touch the puck. You see that, and then I'm sure a lot of Chicagoans saw that during that dynasty run, right, where you had some guys that were able to lean on other players, and it was extremely effective. So from an early age, we were hitting. That comes with its advantages and also its problems when guys leave the game, but we can touch on that later. And
sure,
I moved away from home at 15 years old after getting drafted to the the OHL, which is a Canadian hockey league. It's a developmental league where you play 16 to 21-year-olds, and that's really where you get drafted to the NHL. Drafted in high school at 17, turning 18, graduate high school, turn pro at 19, spend a year and a half in the minors, and then off to Arizona. I got drafted by the Penguins, 73rd overall, and started my career at 19.
For sure.
Skate, hit, shoot, all that good stuff. And then I just learned how to protect myself and others. And it was just one of the skill sets that was kind of required and was wanted back then.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, like, especially when we talk about the enforcer role, like I learned very early on that, hey, I'm 5'8". I'm not gonna go out there and dominate everybody, whether it's football, playing safety, or whether it's anywhere else in any category, lacrosse, hockey. I was playing floor hockey, Dan. I wasn't good enough to skate. I can't lie to you. But we were out there, man, lacrosse, football, and just being an enforcer was everything. I wasn't Odell Beckham Jr. and one hand catch anybody. Like I was just out there knocking heads, and that's what we learned very early on was how we were going to make it. We were going to be a mutt, and I always loved watching Shawzy, and I always loved watching you and just doing what you guys do. How early on did that become like the biggest focus of your game? When did you realize, hey, this enforcer role is really where I could be? Because I know early on, everybody wants to be, Wayne Gretzky. Everybody wants to be Showtime, but it's like, you have to understand especially in the league, you're either the Billy Hamilton of baseball or the Mike Trout, and there's a lot more Billies than there are Mikes.
No doubt. Yeah. So I mean, I think people get it a little bit twisted when they look at professional athletes and professional sports and how you make it. Everybody's just as skilled. Then
Mm,
there's some caners and there's some taves, right, that put in a little bit more work than everybody else. The difference that separates everybody is just work ethic and how hard you compete and practice and when nobody's looking in the gym, etc. So everybody's kind of on par, and I viewed fighting as just kind of another thing that I could, another feather in the cap, another thing on my resume that could get me to the league and could help me stay in the league, because the league was very much still predicated on that, and it still is today. Not necessarily the fighting, but taking somebody's will to play away in the playoffs over a 7-game series and leaning on people is the ultimate. It's how you win the ultimate goal. I
mm,
don't think that's ever going to change, no matter how skilled the NHL gets.
right.
So I just viewed fighting around. It was really when I got drafted, and I knew that I was getting into the league, because I played the game hard, even though I only fought 5 or 6 times in the OHL. Played it really hard, and I'm an honorable guy, and I knew that I would have to fight. So I went from about 165 pounds. I put 30 pounds on, went up to 195, and then I ended up, fighting a guy named Kevin Colley. I beat him up, beat another guy up. Then all of a sudden, you get a pretty quick reputation, and it was, again, just something that I added to my skill set, and it ended up getting me in the NHL after a year and a half, and it ended up, helping me stay there, because, like I said before, I could pretty much do everything. I could play with the big boys. I could also play on the fourth line and play that enforcer role and
Mm.
move up and down the lineup. So I would say, kind of like a new school type of enforcer that wasn't a liability on the ice.
Right, and we had originally, and this was like 2 years back. I'm sure you've seen the movie Goon. We
Yeah,
had the
good
actual
one.
live Doug Atkins on there, and we were talking to him, and just like the true story of the movie Goon. And if you ever check out his book, like it's a great book, and it's so much more fleshed out and so much more real than obviously the comedic version that they came out with,
Yeah.
and that second movie that they came out with. But whatever, we're not gonna talk about that. But
Yeah. I mean, we can. It's like, I bet you there's a lot of psychology that goes into that book, talking about just how nervous guys are the
for
day
sure,
before, the day of, the night before, knowing that they have to throw down with some pretty serious dudes. It's
yeah.
it's no joke. Yeah.
For sure. And what I loved talking to him about though was growing up near Canada. And he said the same thing you did, very small town. And if you
Uh-huh.
weren't playing hockey, you were just kind of the weird guy by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who got you into that? Where did the love of hockey even come from? Obviously, more than just like, hey, the community was doing it, so I was doing it. Was there anybody in the family that was like, this is what you're doing?
No, I've had this question numerous times. Like, both my brothers played. I was the middle of two bros, and they were just as good, but they liked going like moose hunting and snowmobiling with my dad, who was a
Mm,
sheet metal mechanic for Bombardier, and so we had ATVs and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't want to go. I would stay home curving my stick and downstairs working out, and I was never a kid that was like, I'm doing this because I'm going to get to the NHL. I was doing it because it just felt good, and I
mm,
just liked the game, and I took it very seriously from an early age. And I played, for all the kids out there listening, like, I played double A my whole life. I didn't play triple A. I didn't play at the top league. I only took that step my last year, the draft year, because that's kind of where everybody is
right.
watching. And so, you can go from double A to triple A to drafted to the OHL to drafted to the NHL within a 3 to 4 year period. And that's really how it happened for me, man. I just got noticed. And I always believe, no matter what level you're at, if you're good enough, somebody's going to find you.
No, most definitely. I think like we always talk about it. It's like, you know, obsession's gonna be talent every time. And
No
everybody always
doubt.
talks about like, hey, what's your favorite Adam Sandler movie? And it's always going to be Hustle. Even though, Happy Gilmore was as great as it was,
It's a tough one to
Billy
beat.
Madison. I mean, they're all Little Nicky, they're all iconic, but it's like in that Hustle movie, like you find out, like, man, even as a scout, even as journalist, no matter what you're doing, like, man, this shit is hard. And it's
Mm,
like there's a million other people trying to do what you want to do. So you just have to be obsessed with it. And it's like
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
but you kind of teetered our next question.
Mm.
I always ask everybody that's on here, best athlete of the family, two brothers, Daniel Carcillo, today, are you the best athlete of the family?
Yeah, absolutely. They would tell you that. Yeah, no, no joke. Paul, Steve, you know that.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. I have to ask because sometimes we get the humble cats in here. Sometimes we got the college guys in here, and they're like, "Oh, well, my sister's really great gymnast," and I'm like, "Bro, you run a 440 like flat. Like, what are we talking
Yeah, I
about?"
mean, I just ran 2 miles under 7 minutes, so I'm still
Insane,
cruising.
insane.
Yeah.
That's where he was when it blipped for a second. He just had to get those quick steps in. But
Yeah, there you go.
man, we're looking at it. 429 games played in the NHL, 48 goals, 52 assists, 100 points. Dan got right out of there. He hit a hundo. He said, "I'm
Yeah,
done."
no doubt. Century mark. Let's go. Yeah.
But looking back on that career, man, from draft day on, how was the draft day experience? Third round, 73rd, if I'm not mistaken, overall.
72nd or 73rd, yeah. I'm
73rd.
not sure.
I probably should know.
That's all good.
But
I should probably know.
but so what was that experience like? Everybody always sees number one overall pick. There's cameras, flashes, they're interviewing you and your mama. Like it's a whole big
Mhm.
thing. But
Mhm.
73, where are you on that day? What's that experience like? Who do you have around you?
Yeah, so my family was there. My parents, my grandparents, who are no longer with us, but were my mom's
Sorry.
parents. They were, no, Gigi and Ed. They were fresh off the boat from Italy and migrated to Canada. But they were my number one fans, and so they were there. And then my agents, and you usually go to the first day. The first day is the first, second, and third rounds. So if you're in that top 90, then you go. There's 30 guys that go every round,
Mm,
and I was in there. I was pretty high up, and so we kind of figured that I would go, and so we went to Nashville. It was it was a good experience with the parents, and you sit there and you just wait and hope that you get your name called. There's a lot of communication, and you kind of know who's kind of front running. And at that point, it was Pittsburgh. Again, I played a skilled game, but I played a pretty hard game. And you know how French guys are, they're little kittens with mittens. So you got to put some guys like me around them that would help them, play their game. And
no
and
doubt.
uh, I was in training camp with some pretty cool legends like Mario, and he ended up becoming the owner that year. Eddie O was still the coach in my first couple of training camps. So that was cool. And then Crosby came, and Steve Dixon and Fleury, and so I was always surrounded by really good players. And yeah, spent 3 years in their developmental system, and then asked for a trade pretty early on when I turned pro, and then started my career with Arizona, and Wayne was my coach. So that was a pretty cool 2 years.
And I was gonna ask you too, because the trade thing is really interesting to me, especially, like we always hear the disgruntled Stefan Diggs of the world who, I want out of here, getting paid 100 mil. You're on such a small rookie deal, third
Mhm.
round pick. What are those conversations like, even with an agent of like, hey, I just don't want to be here, but you also know how the game works. You don't want to
Yeah.
ruffle some feathers, make other GMs or other owners think like, hey, this guy doesn't want in.
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, I was pretty cordial. My agent said, like, there were so many guys that were in the feeding system that
Yeah.
were ahead of me that were going to get a shot no matter what I did, no matter how hard I played, no matter how many goals I put up. They were just going to get a shot before me. And there were a lot of guys like Max Talbot and these guys who were really good that deserved to be there before me. But I just kind of could see the writing on the wall. I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready now. And I don't want to spend another year riding the bus making 50 grand, like on a two-way contract, that sort of thing. So I just asked for a trade, at the trade deadline. I think I got traded for George Larocque.
Mhm.
And I'm almost certain I did. And Arizona was great because it was kind of where everybody was started to go to die, like older dudes, and I got my shot right away. First year, I think I scored 13 goals, led the league in PIMS, made a name for myself, which is really important early on, and had a really good 2.5 years. Ulf Samuelsson, Grant Fuhrer, Wayne Gretzky, they were great to me. Old school dudes. I played an old school game, so they really liked me. And then I ended up. I didn't ask for this trade, but I ended up getting traded to Philly 2.5 years later for Scotty Upshaw. But I wanted it because I was the type of player that I thought I was like, if I could get to an original six team, a team
Right.
that where fans, were like Chicago, where fans were really interested in it, not just sold out games when Toronto Maple Leafs were in town and all the snowbirds, then I think I could have accelerated my career, and luckily that happened.
Most definitely, and we got a lot of Philly guys on the network, especially at Fox Sports The Gambler and everybody over there. So can you kind of take me through somebody who's never personally been to Philly?
Yeah.
Um, what is the atmosphere like? Does it live up to the hype? Because we see, the Philadelphia Phillies, they're singing, I'm in the corner watching, they're having a blast, but Hockey Town is different. Like I've had beef with Flyers fans since I came out the womb, and we know it goes the same way over there. Just like Green Bay, just like Chicago. Take us through that experience with the fans. How early were you embraced because of that style of hockey that you play?
Early. I mean, well, so first of all, Scotty Upshaw was a fan favorite,
Mm,
and he's now part of the Missing Curfew crew. Him and Shane O'Brien, great dudes. Like I known them off the ice, and that whole crew with Lupo and Kevin Connolly, and we all hang. But so for early on, like people were pissed. Fans were pissed at Holmgren. They're like, "Dude, who the hell? Why are you trading our? Scotty goes so hard." And Paul's like, just give this kid a couple games, and give him a chance. And so I had some shoes to fill, big shoes to fill.
right.
And luckily, I play the game the same way I kind of lived life at that point, which was extremely hard, and on raw emotion. There was no studying. There was just pure reaction and emotion. So they saw it early on, and the Philly fans are amazingly intense. But I mean, it makes you play harder. It makes you practice harder, because that if you even show up, for 2 minutes in a bad game or two bad shifts, they're going to start booing you. You miss a
Yep.
play, you miss a power play, they're going to start booing you. But I really like that, and my brothers. I'll tell a quick story. My brothers came to a playoff game in our first year against the Penguins. And there was a guy in a Penguins jersey and a guy in a Flyers jersey. And at this point, everybody's tailgating because it's nice weather. And, the Flyers area has, all four rinks in the same spot. Well, the
Mm,
Spectrum's not there anymore, but they have the football rink, the hockey rink, and the baseball rink. The Phillies were playing. Like, it was buzzing. The city was buzzing. This guy, I guess, walks by where my brothers are hanging, and some guy just pops out of a truck and just punches this guy in the Penguins jersey. And my brother's like, dude, what is going on here? Like, and then just walk back like calmly. So they got a pretty good sense of just how passionate these fans were. And even during the regular season, man, there's tons of fights in the 300. So,
oh man, it's
yeah,
and I
yeah,
personally myself, we do not advocate for it over here because we don't want anything crazy happening to anybody. But like we've seen it ourselves in Chicago. Like when Green
yeah,
Bay comes in town, it's wicked. Like those are scary hours. Like you fuck around and find out. You know what I mean? You
yeah.
always get that one guy. I'm that one guy who goes to Sox games wearing a Cubs jersey. I do not
Dude,
care. Like
even if you don't fuck around, sometimes you find out. But
sometimes you
like,
find
just
out on
being,
accident.
yeah, well, being smart about it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe don't wear a jersey that day. Like, just
Yeah,
go enjoy the game.
But 2016 vibes, I was like, you know what? I'm 16. I'm like, we're going. Like, I don't
Yeah,
care.
yeah.
But I want to talk to you about 2010 because
Hmm.
this 2010, 2011, your last year as a Flyer, ended up in Chicago after that year. You're gonna go on this run, change your career even. But you go to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
And we're having these conversations about the team that you're about to win 2 Stanley Cup championships with, you just get beat by. What was that feeling like to be there at the highest level? And knowing the competitor that you always talk about, and you always say, this is who I was, this is the drive. Um, how does that motivate you for anybody listening to where you're like, okay, we came up short, but this next season is the season?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I really loved my time in Philly. Like, everybody was amazing to me, from the organization top down to the fans, to all the guys that I played with. Without 2010 and without that magical run when we got in on the last shootout, Boucher stopping Jokinen and Ole Jokinen and Giroux putting it 5-hole on Lundqvist. Like, we got in eighth place. Like Richards, Carter,
Mhm.
Hartnell, Giroux, Timonen, Pronger. I mean, it was an amazing team. Like, it was a really fun time. City was buzzing. And so without that 2010 run, we wouldn't have met Chicago, and they wouldn't have seen, me in the finals and that sort of thing. And I would have never ended up there. And so I owe a lot of my success in the later stages of my career to Philly and to that city. So, and to the Flyers. So, and then, going over to kind of, I wouldn't say the dark side, but just another team that could use my skill set was really exciting. And you got to remember, like, we played against each other
all the
like
time.
from young ages, right? Like I knew Frazier and Duncan and Siebes, and me and Siebes played under 18s, won a gold medal in Russia. Like, and so to be a part of that core group of dudes was really special. And we had something, when you have a core group of guys all pulling the rope in the same fashion, you can put anybody else around them as long as they're going to buy into the program and show up. You just have to show up as your best self and as your best player. And if you're not in the lineup, then you show up in other ways, like I did towards the end of my career, which is just playing the playlist and being a good teammate and making sure guys are feeling, happy and comfortable. Yes, there's a ton of stress, but you kind of cut through that with some of these other tools. Yeah, man, it was an amazing time and in my life, and luckily we won twice. And I had a chance at it 4 times, and I couldn't be more proud about the work that we put in both Philly and Chicago.
Without a doubt, and I'm just so happy you left out LA in that statement there.
Yeah, well, I mean, we went
Yeah.
to. I mean, that year was kind of it was a kind of weird year, man. I went.
We could skip it. We could skip it. We're good. We're good
I mean,
over
listen,
here.
wow, but my time with the Rangers was pretty magical too, man.
No, most
But
definitely. But I want to
yeah,
ask you too, because this is the question I feel like everybody always has their own story to.
yeah,
That 2010 Stanley Cup run, Kane
uh-huh.
hits the shot. He's the only one celebrating. Where was Daniel Carcillo in that moment? Like, what
We
was
were.
your thought process?
I was in the dressing room. Some of the guys were up top, like
Mhm.
watching the game. I was in the dressing room. Nobody really knew what happened. We had to see the replay, and I mean, I'm a finality guy. Like I like finality, and if it's in, we had a nice run,
Right.
and there's things we could have done better, but it wasn't our year. You know, at that point, like you see it a little bit today, but like back in the day, there was so much parity. Like when you get into the playoffs, so your only goal is to get in, because once you're in,
Anything
anything can
happens.
happen. Anybody can win. Everybody's good enough to like that gets in, and yeah, he just, it was their year, man. They had a sick squad. They had a sick squad,
Man.
and you can see it with the other 2 wins, right? In 13, 15. Like I said, you get a core group of dudes with a solid management, with an amazing coach like Quinville. Shout out to Joel and his whole coaching staff, regardless of what people think of him. And he's an amazing man. One of the best coaches I've ever had, if not the best coach. So hopefully he gets back in there and doesn't have to, take the fall for everything that happened. But yeah, I mean, all the way around, man, just a solid run for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, for sure. And we definitely will touch on not exactly what happened in that Blackhawks situation, but just all around the game of hockey and your experiences,
Yeah,
if any, with that in a little bit, because it is important. We're not going to sit here and say these things didn't happen, but we
yeah,
also
absolutely.
understand there's an scapegoat in every story,
For
and we're
sure.
not going to shit on the Blackhawks organization whatsoever. But it's not the first time questions like this have been asked. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They
with
can.
that.
Everybody can do a little better. You know
Yeah,
what I
like,
mean? That's all.
like, all
Just
right,
leave it
like,
there.
right. Oh, it was Joel.
Yeah,
Well, what about this? What happened after Joel left? No, don't look at that. But
yeah.
in all seriousness, man, you played with some greats. You played with some
Yeah,
greats, but I felt like you got the absolute prime. And maybe I'm a little biased because we're in Chicago right now, but you got the prime of Kaner. You got the
yeah, man.
prime of Johnny, Dunks, Siebes. I mean, you got this little mutt running around who's making a name for himself, going after Chara and Andrew Shaw. You got all these guys, Marion Hossa. I mean, you come and play with these guys. And I was wondering for you, man, like how much does that make your day easier, your job easier when you know that you have everybody on all cylinders able to do their job at the highest level and you just get to free reign, be yourself, and play along some of these guys.
Yeah, man. And Corey Crawford too. Shout out to
Man,
him. He's fucking solid in that, dude. Yeah, I mean, it made my job a lot easier. And all I had to do, and these guys knew, one of the things that I made a name for myself, I was very unpredictable. So when I was on the ice or I was in the game, guys tended to behave, regardless of how big they were, right? Because I would do things that I wouldn't just drop my gloves. I would, sometimes I wouldn't know what I was going to do to you. So that helped with the guys feeling a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, one of the things that when you're playing at such a high level with guys that you just mentioned, the Hall of Fame dudes, you have to be ready like every night. And Joel was the type of coach that if you had one bad shift, no joke, one bad shift, 30 fucking seconds, he would sit you on the bench. Like you would be done. And immediately. And so, you had that kind of walking on eggshells feeling, but it made everybody better. And the team, the organization, down from the coaching into the training rooms, to the trainers, to people who were, feeding us, taking care of our diet, everybody was just dialed. And it was a really well-oiled machine. So to come in and just play a small role in that, which I was a small role, I just had to be, the best version of myself, and then everything else really took care of itself. So I couldn't have asked for a better time to be a part of a championship winning dynasty, regardless of, as you mentioned, what happened or how
Right.
some people view. There's so much psychology that goes in, and there's so many details that individuals in the press and fans and even myself, I don't know what really happened, right? So yeah, it was just a really special time to be a part of a team like that.
Most definitely. And, again, I want to express it because Dan is in no way saying, neither am I saying that those things didn't happen, but it's definitely like, we talk about the things happening around right now with Dan Schneider and
Hmm.
Nickelodeon, and you'll have some kids say, "Nah, Dan was cool." Like to this day, I still talk to Dan. He could come to my wedding, and then you have other people who had traumatizing stories. So not everybody's story is individually the same.
Yeah.
And there's a whole psychology to why certain people are affected and why others aren't. Why certain people, go towards others. They lean
Hmm.
on people who will go through things. It's a whole. I'm not even qualified enough to make the conversation start.
Well, it's not to say that things didn't happen, that
Right,
people made mistakes, and the league and people have taken steps towards correcting those mistakes, and that's where we're at today.
for
I don't
sure.
think anything else needs to be said.
For you though, even past the Blackhawks, because we're not. It has nothing to do with the Hawks at this point. But did you ever have any experiences similar to those? Maybe mental abuse, anything to that level, at any level of the game, or have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, all the way up, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's the way that people parented. That's the way that coaches coached. That's just the way it was,
Mhm.
And one of the main reasons, there's two main reasons why people will never ever be able to do what professional athletes do, which is one of the reasons they spend their hard-earned money to come and watch us, and because they're enamored by it. Number one is the physical aspect of the game. Like, you would never imagine the workouts that we had to put ourselves through, both during the season and out of the season, to keep ourselves in shape. And number two is the mentality side of in between the ears. Like, everybody in the AHL or in the lower leagues or in the NCAA that doesn't make it to the NFL, most of them are talented. It's what's between the ears, right? It's your mindset, it's your perspective, it's your visualization of where you're going to go and letting nothing come in the way of that. And that includes coaches being hard on you. So, there's this mentality of this society right now, and I see it with my kids, that is extremely soft, and everybody thinks that we're doing people a favor. We're
Yeah.
not. We're not, right? And so now, where does it cross over from being hard on people to coaching them, to getting the best out of them, to then abuse?
Right.
That's on an individual level, and coaches have to be aware of that, right? I saw guys break down and cry in the rooms because they couldn't handle it, and I was like, in my head, I was it was dog eat dog, right? I was kind of happy to see it, to be honest, even though they were on my team. In the AHL, it's like, it is very intense because everybody's trying to get to the next level. Yes, you're on the same team. You want to see them win because then you'll win,
Of course.
but you want to get there first, man. It's like, I'm going to feed my family in my mouth before you get it, right?
Right.
So it's this could be a series of podcasts or discussions on kind of the mentality. And, if you're not built for it, most guys will just either quit, or they'll just be happy making a living down in the minors. But that doesn't happen in the big show, and things have changed. Things have tailored towards guys being a little bit more careful. But I'm grateful, man. Like, I went through hazing. I went through the worst of the worst. Like, we started a lawsuit in Canada to hold the OHL accountable. It's still
Mhm.
going on. That stuff doesn't happen. But the flip side to that is, well, that made me into the player that I was,
Right.
right? And so thankfully I'm in a position in my life where I'm grateful for everything that's happened to me because I'm really happy with the individual that I am today. So I my life philosophy, right, is that there's no coincidences in this life, and you get what you need to become who you need to become. And that's kind of where I leave it, man.
No, for sure, and yeah, I'll speak for myself on this one. I think there's levels to hazing. We were
Mhm.
talking about what happened at Northwestern, um, and I could be honest here, Dan. We'll just cut Dan out of this clip. You bunch of weirdos. Y'all are weird. Like that's just
Yeah.
what it is. Like
Yeah.
there's hazing and then there's sexual assault and there's
No
like
doubt.
there's that fine line. You know what I mean? And it's
Well,
like it's one of those things at the end of the day where it's like, the word hazing is thrown around very, very easily. It's like when I hear phenom. I hear phenom all the time when I turn on any NHL game. This kid's a phenom. You said that about the kid last night, but it's like, or the kid that got drafted last year, and it's like at the end of the day, like you got to use the word correctly, what hazing originally was versus
I
what
don't
it
even
is.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
even like the word. So, like, there's abuse, right?
Yeah.
And then there's things that guys go through, like carrying the bag to the bus, right? Last
Getting donuts, you know what I mean? Like,
last off of the bus. Like, you sit and let the vets get off, right? You sit at the front. Like, those types of things are just respect, right? Uh, Things that we had to go through is for sure, without a doubt, abuse. And on top of it, as you mentioned, sexual, emotional, physical. You can't be laying hands on kids. I don't care if you're a vet and you think that this is what needs to happen because you went through it. That's not what the game is about. So that stuff, everybody's on notice now. It's happening less and less because a group of us spoke up, and that is the stuff that we don't need. That being said, I'm speaking from my own experience, right? I have to, it wouldn't be stopped right now if I didn't go through with that and if I didn't have that in my life. So there's two sides to this. I don't want to make it sound like I'm condoning it. And then that, like, let's put that aside. Then there's the coaching aspect of individuals and coaches, of how they use this kind of rhetoric to get the best out of you. And man, I'm telling you, I used to hate some of these coaches like Michel Therrien, but like now I love him, man, because I can see back then he got the best out of me,
mm,
and he didn't abuse me or anything like that. But did I like him at the time? Did I think he was,
right.
of
Thought he was
course
the
I thought,
devil,
yeah,
probably.
no doubt. But he got the best out of me, and I played a 12-year professional hockey career, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without some of these guys.
I want to break down the next chapter of what we're about to talk about. We look at 2015 as such this special year. And this was really the year I felt like for you, this was a whole new chapter in your life. Like we were looking at equipment manager Steve Reif, obviously passes away in the beginning of the year. And a great friend, one of your best friends, Steve Montador, is one of the former Blackhawk. We're looking at a legend, tragically passes away as well. And these are both mental things going on in the world that kind of just very quickly hush hush. We're on a playoff run, we're not talking about it, and that's really how it came across, from the entire league. For you, man, what went into that season? Because I know chapter 5, your nonprofit, came very quickly after. So
hmm
for you, how quickly were you like, I want to get this off the ground running? Can you kind of take me through the creation of the baby of chapter 5?
Yeah. So, well, first, the beginning of that year, I didn't think that I was going to be in Chicago. I actually got the call while I was on an airplane on the tarmac after an
Really quick,
exhibition game.
I
Yeah.
wanna say really quick, shout out to you because I
Yeah.
remember the conversations. Well, he only played 39 games, minimum's 41. So everybody that says Dan shouldn't have a fucking second cup, we're out of here. He's got it. He met the requirement. I don't wanna hear it.
No, no. Well, it's like, I mean, you can't be. So, I think you have hundreds of reputations, right? I've got thousands, and if I was worried about that, I mean, I'd
Right.
never be able to sleep at night. So yeah, I was on the tarmac in on the Penguins flight, and they're like, Stan called me. He's like, "You want to come back? This young kid isn't working out." I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So, signed a one-year deal. My wife was pregnant at the time. We had our boy in November, right after the Austin Wolf was born. So that was amazing to be, I was thinking of going to Russia, like all this crazy stuff.
Mhm.
And just to be back with the guys. And then, yeah, in February, my phone was buzzing off the hook in the room, which isn't, I thought something was wrong with, at home or something. And one of my good friends just, was crying uncontrollably, saying, Steve's gone, Steve's gone. And then I kind of, so it's at the beginning of a game, and we're pretty close to playoffs at this point. And I didn't want nobody else knew.
Right.
So I go in, I try to pretend that nothing's wrong, tying my skates, kind of. People could see it, they could feel it right away, right? That something was up. Start crying a little bit. Try to, Johnny pulls me in the room. He's like, "What's going on?" I told him, but I'm like, let's just keep it. I don't want anybody to know. Like, let's just let me get through this warm up. Let's get through this game. Went out and buzzing around the warm up and saw a Monitor jersey in the stands, and just completely kind of broke down. Went off the ice early. Walked into Q's office, and he gave me a big hug, and he said, I heard. And I just told him, I'm like, I don't think I want to play anymore. I really don't. Because at that time I was starting to deal with like some symptoms from my 6 concussions. And he said, I understand, go home, be with your family, and come back tomorrow. And then in March we were playing in Philly, and he put me in the lineup because we already made the playoffs, and so I still have a job to do. I'm still getting paid.
Right.
We had a conversation, and I got my 7th concussion. Got into a fight because at that point I wanted to feel something else. I was in a pretty bad way, like emotionally, and then after my 7th concussion, man, I couldn't look at my phone for like 30 days. Couldn't watch TV. Symptoms were really, really, really bad. And I just remember talking to Steve, and he was suffering with a bunch of stuff that I was now suffering with after this 7th concussion. I looked around, kind of pulled up my socks. Again, you don't want to be a distraction to the team, right? But I wanted to be a part of the run. And so I came in just being a good teammate, practicing, bag skating, playing the playlist. Like that was kind of my job on the couple runs, and just keeping everybody light and laughing at morning skate and all that good stuff, and just being a good dude. And then, we ended up winning, and I ended up filming a Players Tribune video that was basically a call to arms to say, I knew that Steve was suffering. I knew he reached out to the NHLPA. Nobody was helping him. Nobody was doing anything. And now I was going to be in that position because I knew my time was up because I just signed a 1-year deal, et cetera. Right. So we made this video, call to arms. We need to do better. And that's where Chapter 5 was born. And I retired soon after. And then the real fight started, man. It was like tons of symptoms. And like to the point where I got really angry and I didn't want to go near the rink. I didn't go to the banner raising. I just kind of started isolating with numerous symptoms. Doctors told me I had mild dementia symptoms, which is incurable. And went through a pretty dark phase for 4 years. But luckily, I've been able to cure myself of those symptoms in 2019. And it's with these emerging medicines that are going through the FDA and these drug development programs. And there's a lot of really amazing research being done by institutions like Johns Hopkins and NYU Langone. And yeah, man, lucky to have my health for, I've had my health now for 5 years, and I've created businesses out of it. I've created, Chapter 5, which is kind of the transition program, next chapter in your life. 5 was Steve's number. And yeah, man, living a happy and fulfilling life now. So.
For sure. And I want to ask you something, because I was doing my research on it, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Wasana Health, big CEO, but HQ is in Chicago, but it's mainly in Canada. So where in Chicago? How often are you in Chicago, actually? For anybody that's wondering to continue to do research on this, and can you explain to the person not understanding why this isn't an American-based thing yet? Because we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. So I'll just give the overview. So in 2015, I was dealing with slurred speech, headache, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues, light sensitivity, headaches, head pressure, brain fog, brain fatigue, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. Like, those are my days. A good day was 5 symptoms. A really bad day was 15. And I had a lot more bad days than good. Doctors started prescribing me pharmaceuticals that exacerbated other things. I went to stroke rehabilitation, brain brain banks to kind of do vestibular ocular training. I used peptides, ketones, hormone replacement therapy, vestibular ocular training, float tanks, hyperbaric chamber, Mox acupuncture, cranial sacral. You're starting to get the picture that I was an advocate for all these treatments that weren't really working. And in 2019, I took an invitation because I saw a study done by the Imperial College of London of a brain under fMRI. So it's a brain scan that basically maps every single level of the brain and brain activity, which is shown to be diminished in people that obviously get hit in the head or people that have depression, etc. And this brain was on psilocybin. It's the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. Okay. And it's a Schedule 1 in America, meaning that it has no medicinal value and that it's highly addictive. But in 2003, places like Johns Hopkins started to research psilocybin because what they were noticing is that it connects brain hemispheres again, and it helps cure depression for up to a year in these patients that take high doses of it. All right. And so I saw this, I correlated it back to what the doctors were telling me. I'm like, this could work for me. And it was kind of a last ditch effort. At this point, I was suicidal. I was getting ready to unburden my family. I had 3 kids at this point in 2019. With concussion survivors, doctors tell you this is your new normal. There's no FDA approved medicine. Right. So I'm sorry, buddy. Like, just find ways to live with it. I took this invitation to a farm. It was decriminalized in Denver in 2019. So because it's a Schedule 1, you can get arrested for it and do 30 years in jail if you're dealing it and these sorts of things. But in these cities or states that are decriminalized, which now there's 32 cities and states that are decriminalized, you can take this medicine without fear of repercussion. Okay. So I went there, I took it, I took some diagnostics pre and post because I knew how stigmatized these medicines are. And I went through this ceremony, and 6 months later, I rescanned my brain. I had no abnormalities, and my blood work was completely clear. So I was completely cured of all of those symptoms that I just told you. And I know that this sounds remarkably, it's hard to believe for some people that are probably listening to this or seeing this, but I can prove it with the brain scans. And so then what I did was I created a company out of it. I patented this method with my own money because at the time I was a concussion advocate now for 5 years, but I found something that cured me. And so I founded WeSauna Health. We raised $16 million. I took it public on the CSE. I ran that company for 3.5 years. And I just recently sold the FDA drug development program that we created to try to create the first ever drug to treat a concussion related symptom to a NASDAQ listed company. And then we owned and operated 3 psychiatrist-led clinics that are using FDA-approved ketamine right now. So tons of research out there about these emerging medicines. There's also 23 states right now that have adult therapeutic use legislation so that people can gain access to this medicine today and don't have to wait for drug development companies. But there's also 3 drug development companies where the FDA has deemed psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, to be breakthrough therapy designation. So there's tons of research, man. There's tons of safety. Some of these clinical trials and these drug development programs are in phase 3, treating treatment-resistant depression. Right. That's an indication where if you have tried 3 medications and it hasn't worked, then you can get this medication, right? So tons of efficacy out there. I know there's stigma associated with it, but we can point to tons of studies, and tons of cities and states are starting to, change their laws. And it saved my life, and it saved the life of tons of veterans and other athletes. And so I appreciate you, let me stand on the soapbox here for a second and just tell everybody about it, because man, we got to provide hope, because the tools that we have right now are inadequate for sure.
And I, not to change the subject, but still like teeter that same line. Like, I think about my experience. I'm not in the NHL, getting, whopped by Chara and all these other guys. I'm just getting absolutely dogged. But 3 concussions in, I'm 18 years old. My girlfriend at the time, I just about to graduate high school, she commits suicide. And I go through these things. Yeah. Who do I hit up? I hit up Daniel Carcillo because I'm suffering 3 concussions. 2 I got in a 2-week span because I was good enough to play, coach. Like, we're out there and we're dogging guys again, and then it's like, then you can't sleep at night, and then your hands twitching during class, and it's like, you don't know these things, and then the lights hurt. Like, no one talks to you about it. And I hit you up because the only thing you can find out at that time, if you looked up anything about concussions and post-traumatic brain injuries and CTE, was the chapter 5 video. And
Mm.
that was like, man, that's Car Bomb. I've known Car Bomb. Like he's doing this, and that's how you and I started our relationship. And we even saw each other that summer. I'm pull up this pic. You ready for this, Dan?
Oh man, yeah,
It's
yeah, this is
crazy.
cool. Show
There's
me.
less hair here and there's less hair here. It's the wildest pic I think I've seen in a
Oh, dude,
long
and then
time.
that's crazy. And then just
Um,
look at me. Like, look at how thin and like, dude, I am in it right there.
And
You know,
it's one of those things where, like, we even look at that and it's like the difference for you,
that's
bro,
crazy.
is like I would even say you look healthier today than
Oh,
you
for sure.
did in that championship run.
Absolutely, I am. I mean, I look at pictures when I'm in the NHL. I'm taking hits, right? And every day, I am by far the highest operating, healthiest version of myself. My brain scans are still clear. I've been doing this for 5 years now, right? And I appreciate you bringing that up because, I mean, dude, it's stories like that, which obviously I didn't know before we
Yeah, and
came
I
on.
never even talked to you about
Yeah.
it. I just said, "Hey, listen, like, I'm not doing well."
But
Like,
this is why I keep going, man. This is why I answer people who just DM or like, I mean, I am this is why we have to do what we do, right?
right.
And because now there is a cure for brain injury survivors. It's legal in Oregon. It's going to be legal in Colorado in about a year. Right now Oregon's completely legal and it's going to be legal in Illinois. We introduced the Cure Act in Illinois, all of the, and it's going to be very regulated, and it's safe, and there's programs that are being created, and senators are introducing this legislation because they know how safe this medicine is,
Mhm.
and it's saving so many lives. And I appreciate you. It's the reason that I wake up every single day. I just went running before this because it's one tool, supplementation, these medicines. It's just a tool. We got to do other things, right, to stay on point.
For sure.
But stories like you, man, that's why I do it. Full
Man,
circle.
it's the craziest full circle
That's
when we
cool.
really break it down. Because even
Yeah.
I'm coaching kids now and, like, like,
Nice.
we myself, man, even in high school, I was coaching at my old school, they're like, "They called you hit stick," and I was like, "Yeah," like, I was like, "But we're
It
not doing
sounds
that
like
shit."
it sounds like you played the game or most of the games just like me.
Had
You
to,
know?
bro.
Yeah.
Literally, I'm not even lying to you, man. Like, growing up Italian, Irish kid,
No doubt.
Chicago,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you gotta do what you gotta do.
For sure.
But, we were always fighting. We were
I know.
always
Yeah,
either
yeah.
getting our ass kicked or having a good day, and a good day was just not getting my
Yeah.
ass kicked. So,
If there ain't a fight on the tennis courts or,
yeah,
as we're playing ball hockey, did we
but
really do it, you know?
it was one of those things though where it's like, as I've gotten older, like, man, like and being Italian, it's like, man, like this stuff, no, we don't do yoga, we don't do breathing
Yeah.
techniques, we don't talk about things. That's all I like advocate now is like that's
I
how I
know.
got over my concussion. I think I stopped at like 4 or 5. I think that's where I was at.
The difference
Um,
is, though, for everybody listening, right? The
mm,
dog is still in me.
for
I just
sure.
use the voice very differently, right? And
It
I
barks
use it
different.
to,
That's the only
yeah, man.
thing.
And breath work and sitting with your thoughts and meditation is a great way for you to create a relationship with yourself to understand how crazy the mind is, to then not entertain all of these crazy thoughts and things that we do that we then regret. So I appreciate you bringing that up because I grew up the same way, man. Hard life, hard knocks, fucking parents. It's like cut and dry, dude. There ain't no feelings here. What do you mean you're
How it
tired?
was.
Get up.
How it was. Remember if bad
So
things happen, they're like, "You know what you should do?" I'm like, "What's up?" They're like, "You should get a job." And I was like,
yeah.
"Oh, okay."
But I tell my kids, my job, I have 4 kids now.
Mhm.
My job as a parent is not to make it comfortable in this household because I come from the business world now and
Right.
this world of professional sports. Then I'm not doing my job as a parent. If I'm making it easy on them, too easy, right? There's a fine line, then I'm doing them a disservice because they're going to get into the world and they're going to get beat up and then they're not going to be ready for the challenges that come, which is life. So there's a fine line between, yes, visualization, meditation, understanding who you are as a person, creating that personal relationship, but then also like work ethic, attention to detail, doing the things that suck repetitively and pretending like you like them. Discipline
Right.
is something that we gotta continue to teach our kids,
And
through sport, right?
I was wondering if I can get one last question from you.
Yeah.
because this is one that I know is a touchy conversation, but I feel like because of the way you're moving, because of, the charge that you're leading with so many other great individuals right now, I know they're gonna come calling, and I know at
Yeah.
some point the NHL is trying to, make a good light of what's happening.
Hmm.
As this continues to have success, do you see the NHL kind of trying to, hey, like we support this now, trying to be in that place, and where are you at as of accepting that? Because I think everybody, and speaking for myself, but I think everybody understands they don't give a fuck at the end of the day what happens, but they're gonna do what they have to do to save face. So where are you at as it pertains to them potentially reaching out at some point about what you've been working on? And do you even want to have those conversations?
So I'm actively helping guys that reach out to me that have played and that continue to play. So I
Mhm.
don't need the NHL or the
Right.
NHLPA to really do anything. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. The reality of corporations, right? So number one, the NHL still is the last league on earth to admit a link between repetitive head trauma and neurodegenerative disease. Basically, being sick. So if you're an NHL player right now, what I would ask you is, are you getting the best care if that's the corporation that you're working for and that's their stance? The answer is unequivocally no. Then if that's the case, like what are you doing to reset your brain and to protect your brain? And number two, the NHLPA is sitting on like a $250 billion pension, $1 million pension fund that we paid. Yet they're only giving, very low amounts of, I think it's like in and around 300,000, maybe $400,000 to the NHL Alumni Association to treat players that are sick, that got sick in this league. So there's all of these things that I see. I just can't put my attention there. Where I put my attention and my passion is creating these businesses that people can come and access this medicine safely, responsibly, because I always know the NHL, regardless of their stance, and the NHLPA, right, the association that we pay dues to
Mhm.
protect us, they're always going to make people sick. And I'm just gonna play over here, and guys know where to find me, and I'll make them better. That's where I sit, and I don't really waver from that. I don't need the NHL to change anything
Right.
about how I'm living my life and operating.
Love that, brother. But we
Yeah.
appreciate you for being here, man. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. Really
Cool.
quickly, can you just pump out either your social medias or anywhere
Sure.
anybody can find you and what you got going on?
Yeah, Instagram, Daniel Carcillo 13, X, Carbon Boom 13, LinkedIn, Daniel Carcillo, Facebook, Daniel Carcillo. A lot of people are like, well, why don't you change that? I'm like, man, I'm proud of who I was, It
No,
took
for sure.
took a lot of work.
Really quick too. I want to get, because we had some beef, myself and some Flyer fans. Where did
Yeah.
Car Bomb originate?
So one of my former teammates, we were at a bar in London after my first year, and they're like, man, you need a nickname. And he just tossed out, what about Car Bomb? And it just stuck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Because if Flyers fans were saying it was them, I was like, he was Car Bomb way before that. I don't even want to hear it.
it was my first year after being on the Flyers. So it originated from the Flyers. So yeah, they can own it.
Ah,
Yeah,
we know where he won. We know where he
no
won, and
doubt,
that's all that
no
matters.
doubt,
But
no
Dan,
doubt.
man, we appreciate you being here, man.
Cool, buddy.
Again, you could still check out Chapter 5. You could still check out Wasana Health and so many other things Dan is doing through his social media accounts. He's got a LinkedIn tree. He does. Dan, can really quick, if you don't mind, can you explain I see you doing live chats a lot,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
if you could you touch on that, where they can
Yeah,
find that?
so we still help a lot of people. Chapter 5 is somewhat winded down, but my wife and I we take calls all the time.
Mhm,
So reach out. We Sauna Health, I ended up selling the drug development program as well as the clinics. So that's winding down right now.
mhm,
And what I'm doing right now, I'm the COO, Chief Operating Officer of Healing Realty Trust. We are we're an investment type of fund that is buying real estate, healthcare related real estate assets for the psychedelic medicine industry. Once these FDA approved medicines are approved, you'll come to one of our facilities to experience this medicine. That real estate, that infrastructure in healthcare doesn't exist where you have to go into the brick and mortar. So that's one of the things I'm doing. And then the other things on advocacy and education, I am a board member of the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition. We've done 2 congressional briefings in Washington, D.C., and we'll continue to advocate for a bill and these medicines. And I also do webinars and free webinars every single week that people can come to, ask me questions about these emerging medicines. I highlight, research and just show people and get them up to speed on some of the tools that they can use to recover from concussion, depression, anxiety, PTSD. It's not medical advice, but I talk a lot about my own experience, and I have other people on that talk about their experience and how they've used some of these medicines to get better. And then, we'll just stay tuned. We're going to be opening our first clinic in Oregon, which is a legal statewide program for psilocybin. And, the efficacy has been shown to be pretty amazing, up to date. And man, just, really excited to be at the forefront of healthcare and pretty blessed, man.
Man, we can't wait to have you back on eventually, talk more about what you're doing, man. We appreciate you being here once again. With that being said, this is Daniel Carcillo, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, but far bigger and better than that with what he's doing right now. COO. Had to get that right, but appreciate you guys tuning in. This is Mike Hughes, aka the Shy Kid. You're listening to the Shy Kid podcast, brought to you by Give Us a Shot Network. Make sure you give us a like, a subscribe, a follow, where you could hear Dan's story and so many others who tell who they are as people, far more than just the athlete and the number they wear on the back of their jersey. So until then, we'll check you guys out later. Peace.
Give them a shot to do what?